Thanks, Susan. I am genuinely delighted to be here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Let me share my screen real quick, get this thing up and running. I said I like to talk a lot, and that's only true about iNaturalist. I like to talk a lot about iNaturalist. I am not affiliated with them in any way, but I really do love this platform pretty much every way. Like Susan said, I am a excuse me, a PhD student at UCLA. Thank you for having me. My pronouns are he, him, his. And shout out to Glauco, a friend, an old friend from my Park Service monitoring days and during field work. With that, I guess we can get started. So I'm at UCLA, but I spend my summers mostly in the in Great Smoky Mountains National Park on the Tennessee side mostly. And so that's my connection to these fine folks, and thank you again for having me. I study insects, insect declines, and how they may be affecting birds. So you may have heard a little bit about this phenomenon, like the insect apocalypse, so-called, and it's really complex, really complicated. But you probably have heard a little bit about like the bees, for example, the Pollinator Crisis. And there's this theory that this is happening for pretty much all insects. And where my research is, what I'm interested in is, okay, if this is happening, then how are birds going to be affected? Because 90% of bird species eat insects at some point during their lifetime. Do want to say also, this is my first time doing this workshop, so I appreciate your patience as I work out any kinks. Apologies in advance for my cat, because he is still pretty young, and I am sure he's going to make an appearance and going to cause some mischief at some point. So today's agenda, I am going to attempt to cover all of these topics. I'm going to go over iNaturalist overview for anybody who's not familiar. You don't have to be to have done this, but given the topic, chances are that most people probably are. Then we're going to talk about getting iNaturalist data in the first place, so like going from data that is on the website right now to a CSV file on your computer. And it's super easy, actually. Or, you know, I don't want to say like, it's so easy, anyone can do it, but it's simple. I think some people might be surprised by how simple it is. We're going to do a little bit of practice with that. So y'all, by the end of this section, you'll actually have on your computer a CSV file. And if you're on a phone, that's okay. I think you can just, you can still follow along pretty well. And then after that, we will explore iNaturalist data a little bit using Excel. Any spreadsheet program that you have will work. We'll take a break, and we'll do a little bit of practice in Excel. And then one of the things that I'm most excited about is really like using the expertise in this room to come up with ideas, and especially because there's so many people from so many different backgrounds with you know, expertise in education and science and outreach. I'm just excited to see what happens. So we have a Jamboard, which for anyone who's not familiar is just like a place to jot down ideas. And we'll talk about that once we get there. Right, and then we'll wrap up and I'll take some questions. What I won't cover today, for all the scientists and managers out there, if you already use iNaturalist data, like in the day-to-day, you probably won't get a ton out of at least the first part. I'm not going to cover using the API, which is just like an alternate way of a more powerful way of getting data from the website. I'm not going to talk about using R, which is a statistical programming language. But I would be happy to in the future sometime. I think it's just like in the time we have, it's just not worth it. So there's a few things that I want you to be able to take with you from this. So one is an iNaturalist like data guide. This is a screenshotted guide to getting iNaturalist data. Okay, so you can just follow it step by step, and you don't have to listen to a single thing I say here. And you can still just take that guide and still be able to follow it. Second thing is I did prepare an example activity. I'm happy to share that with y'all. It has to do with monarch butterflies, maybe overused in education, but that's okay. They're a great example for iNaturalist. And they're so much fun to raise. I love them. And then also, you should be able to take these ideas back home with you. And then these slides, of course, you're also welcome to have. So let's get started. What is iNaturalist anyway? So it's a lot of things. It's a social media platform. It's a website. It's an app. It's a community of people. It's a database. It's an identification engine. Like you can use the computer vision that they have to identify things automatically. That's amazing. It's also an outreach tool. I'll share a little bit about me. I got started in, I got interested in nature in the very first place because of a website called bugguide.net. And it was kind of an early version of iNaturalist. It's still around. I still use it constantly. But it's focused on insects. And so I think I am evidence of alone, and I know of countless other stories where people, these websites exist and people get interested in them from an early age. So iNaturalist is a website and an organization. They have an app called iNaturalist. They also have another app called Seek. Seek is a version of iNaturalist, basically, that it's kind of gamified. It gives you missions, and you go out and like find all the common bird species in your area. Super cool. And kids really like this, in my experience. So I'll start with a little bit of a story as well. This is an observation I made while I was doing fieldwork last summer. And this is just an example of why iNaturalist is amazing. So this psyllid expert, the common name is like jumping plant louse for anybody who cares. And this psyllid expert, Chris Mallory, his name is Psyllid Hipster on iNaturalist. He found this. He found this observation, and I'm not a psyllid expert. I don't know anything about this group, but I took a picture of it. And Chris found this observation, and it's like, hey, this is a new species. And so once I realized that, I went out and found more of them and collected them. And so now we have like their host plant and some other information about them, including specimens. And now it's possible to actually describe this new species. And I'm not an expert in this group, like I said. I'm basically an ecologist. I'm not a specialist in any group. And I think that's true of a lot of people. But even without being an expert, iNaturalist helps connect you to the people who really do know what they're doing on certain groups. It's really powerful. There is some literature also, another reason why iNaturalist is amazing. There's also some literature on how you can use iNaturalist in the classroom. And it's most often used, in my experience, on the data creation end, like having your students or other people you're reaching out to submit data to the website. And this is really an effective way to learn about the world around you. But what isn't as common yet, but I think will be, is using actual data in the classroom, the data that already exists. And beyond like learning about ecology and biology, I think it's also actually can be a really good introduction to data science and to computer science. if that's the direction that somebody wants to take it. So y'all want data, right? In general, I think teachers a lot of times want to be able to give some data to their students to help them learn. And iNaturalist has lots of it. So what do I mean by data? People upload photos to iNaturalist with two things, locations and date. This is really powerful. From this information alone, you can come up with a lot of, you can explore a lot of interesting patterns. So what are these? What's going on here? Does anybody know? Just drop it in the chat. What are these things? So I can't actually see the chat right now. My apologies, but I'll assume somebody.
Skunks. Striped skunks.
Yes. Yes, striped skunks specifically. This is on this is near my field site in Tennessee, my research station. And so I took a picture with my phone. And then on the website, it has the identification, striped skunk. It has a place. This is in Pittman Center, Tennessee. And it has a date, June 26, 2019. By using hundreds or thousands or millions of these data points, we can see some really cool patterns about the way the world works. So iNaturalist at this point has 60 million observations. This is really incredible, and it's revolutionizing ecology. Just like last month, there was a paper that came out in Science on butterfly abundance trends using iNaturalist data. This is really powerful for scientists, but also for educators, I think, as well. And just in the past, since I took this screenshot, it's already gone up by 2 million. So, for example, what are some questions we can answer with this data, these data? We can look at timing. So right now, it's spring. Birds are arriving. Wherever you are in North America, birds are arriving right now, migrating through. We can look, these data are really good for finding out when exactly these bird species start to arrive in our area, in your areas. It's also really good for species ranges. So maybe you've heard about cane toads in Australia, right? There's a great documentary on the cane toads. Love seeing that. I highly recommend watching it, maybe with your students. I know I saw it in school. And so you can actually track the westward march of the cane toads. People did this when they were introduced on maps. And you can make those same kinds of maps using iNaturalist. So, for example, this little fly, I photographed this in LA a couple weeks ago, is parasitic on a scale insect. And what we can do is actually, like, over time, year to year, follow these, the observations that are made of this fly. For example, you can also look at like more like community level traits. So those are like kind of species level things. But you can also look at like the whole community. What areas have the most species, for example? So like South Texas, if you take like a 1 square mile of South Texas, just a random plot in South Texas, 1 square mile by 1 square mile, does it have more species than a 1 square mile by 1 square mile plot in Maine? And that's an answerable question with iNaturalist, and it will. So that is my really fast iNaturalist overview. Sorry for being so rushed. I could really talk about that all day, but let's get to this next part, actually getting some data from iNat. So on the website, there should be a link to this, what I've called the data walkthrough, okay? And I'm gonna pull it up. You don't have to download it right now, but for your own benefit in the future, it might be useful. I also, if you haven't made an iNaturalist account already, I highly recommend you do that because it'll be necessary to really follow along. So let me pull that up on my screen. Are there any questions while I do that? I know that was kind of fast. Okay. So this is that step-by-step guide I mentioned called the data walkthrough. And if at any point in the future you have questions, feel free to email me. I'm really happy to talk about this at any time. So step one, think about the data you want to get from iNaturalist. This is really important, of course. So some examples are, maybe you want all northern cardinal observations from my home county, Harris County, Texas. Or maybe you want all the fish observations in a certain date in Raleigh. Or maybe you want all the species that have been observed in anywhere. Could be Sri Lanka, could be South Africa. This is a global network. Step two, go to iNaturalist, this link. So specifically go to inaturalist.org/observations/export. And from here, what we're going to do is create a query. It's a pretty simple step-by-step process, but with a few quirks. So the most important thing is probably this first box here that I'm going to talk to you about, the taxon box. Excuse me. Can somebody give me a name of any animal?
Pygmy salamander.
Pygmy salamander, great one. Thanks. This is a one that's in Great Smokies. And let's do observed on, I don't want it to give me like so many data points that it just takes forever to load. So
April might be early. It's got a phenology, so I would try June.
Okay. Let's do June 2020. And if you wanted to specify a user here, you can do that. If you want to specify a project here, you can do that. Projects on iNaturalist are basically user-created collections of observations. So there could be a Great Smoky Mountains project. You could filter only observations from that. You can use multiple taxa. You can ask for like, okay, I want pygmy salamander and I want the other salamanders in the genus Desmognathus from the Smokies. I don't remember their names, but and you could actually type those in here. You would have to use the taxon ID number, not the species name, but you can find that by just navigating to the species page. And I know this is a lot of information going kind of fast. It's all in the handout. So don't worry, you don't need to like memorize all this right now, but just know it exists. And you can, instead of using an actual date here, you can specify a date range. That's helpful. Or you can even specify when the observation was created, right? So that means like, let's say I took a picture of a pygmy salamander in 2004, but I only submitted it to iNaturalist in 2019. And so the time it was created would be 2019, even though it was observed in 2004. So I didn't cover these top boxes here. So search is really, I just recommend not using that unless you really need to search. You're searching for text within an observation. This is not search for a species. That is the taxon box here. So ignore search for now, at least. You can filter out the type of data quality you want. So in iNaturalist, you may be familiar with this structure. If not, that's okay. But observations can be divided into a couple of types of data quality. They call the one type research grade, and that just means that two or more people have agreed on the identification. That doesn't mean that the identification is necessarily right. It just means that two people have agreed. And that is what the INAT folks call research grade. I do in general recommend using research grade rather than needs ID, because needs ID means that only one person has suggested that it's this species, or that there's disagreement. So to get a better chance of getting accurate data, you should probably just restrict it to research grade. Reviewed just refers to if you have seen this. If you have reviewed it, ignore that for now. Identifications, yeah, ignore that for now as well. And captive cultivated, by selecting research grade, you're automatically excluding captive things. Okay, so the next step, after you've filled out your all these boxes here, is to preview what you have created, the query you've created. Okay, in our case, there are exactly 6 observations on iNaturalist that meet the criteria that we have specified above. Okay, 6 isn't a lot, but that's okay. I think this works for an example. And so if you're finding that you're getting like 300,000 observations and you think you should only be getting like 1,000, then it's probably the case that you forgot to fill in one of the boxes that you meant to. Next on in this export tool, you're going to want to choose the columns you want to export. And by that, we mean that you're exporting this data in the form of an Excel file. It's going to be specifically a CSV. That's a comma-separated file. And that means that each observation is going to be a row with a certain number of data about that observation. So for example, one column is going to be the name of the species. Another column is going to be the date. Another column is going to be the time, and so on. By choosing only a few columns, only the columns we need, we make our data export much faster. It can take a very long time to actually produce these data. So I recommend only choosing the columns that you need. So I'm going to select none here by default, and then I'm going to go through and check the boxes that we want to use. The ID, that's just the number for the observation. I think that's useful. The date of the observation, that's also useful. Time zone and time, sure, let's do that. Let's also choose the username of the observer. Let's choose quality grade. It should all be research grade, but just in case we messed up somewhere, let's confirm with that. I don't think we really care about created in general, when it was created. Let's go ahead and click the URL just in case we want to go from our Excel file back to the website to confirm something. And that looks good to me. Same thing for the geography fields here. So we're probably going to want latitude and longitude. Probably going to want the geoprivacy. You can like obscure these data. This is just to know if somebody has said, I don't want the exact location to be used. And if that's the case, then we probably want to exclude it from our data set. I'll go into this more later. But if you're interested in these things, you can explore them. It says exactly what they are under the checkboxes. Okay. Taxon. let's go with the common name of the species, the scientific name. Species guess is just like what the user said it was. We'd probably want what the website says it is, what the community says it is. And I think that's all we really care about right now. So once we've figured out all these things, this is just an example. If you want, you can go back and you know, figure out all of this on your own. But we create export, like I said, it can take a really long time. This is just 6 observations, so it's quick. Okay, and that's it. It's that simple. We can now click download in this green box, and let me navigate to the directory that I want it to be in. And let's say here. Okay, it's downloaded. This is amazing. We got data. All right, so it's in the form right now of a zip folder, okay? To get that out, we're going to have to extract it. In Windows, this is very easy, and in Mac it is too, and this is all in the little step-by-step handout. You don't have to memorize all this, but just click Extract All, navigate to where you want that data to go. By default, it's going to be in the same directory. Okay, that's it. That's extracted. And now, if we go back, we can see that there's this zip folder here, and there's this extracted folder here. Let's click on it. Let's see what we got. It's opening up in Excel. This is it. This is our 6 observations of pygmy salamander. We have the observation IDs. We have when it was observed. We have the exact time it was observed and the time zone. We have the username. Oh, this is hilarious. One of these is mine. I didn't even notice that. Just by coincidence. And then the quality grade. So these are all research grade like we wanted. This is the URL. We could click on that if we wanted to just confirm. We could go to latitude and longitude, etc. Okay? This is super, super powerful. This is like how you, this is data. This is that sweet, sweet data. So let me navigate back to my presentation and see if there were any steps that I want to go over further. This is just going over all of those, these boxes that I talked about. Okay. And I also go over how to extract the zip files and everything. Okay. All right. So you may have questions. There are a lot of us here, and so I would ask that you, if you have questions, ask them in the chat. I'll try to get to them. But we will also be working in breakout rooms, and I will be coming around to the breakout rooms. Now, I probably won't make it to everybody's, but you also have each other to use as a resource. All right. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for now, and let's try breakout rooms. Susan, do you want me to do this? I think I may not have the option to.
I think maybe, John, were you going to put us in breakout rooms? I think John is.
Yes, I can do that. And we said maybe 3 or 4 to a room?
That'd be great. 3 to 5, maybe like, and if you let people like choose their own room, I think that works. Or however you want to do it, John.
I'm not getting that complicated.
All right, no worries.
You're going to get an invitation to a room shortly. What should they do in these rooms, Graham?
All right, great question. What should y'all do in these rooms? So we should go through and try to download data from Inaturalist. I'm going to drop in the chat right now the URL to do that. Oh, John already did. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. And so you go to this exact URL in the chat right now and try to download some data for yourself. It can be anything. I'm actually going to start screen sharing again because I do have actually some more specific instructions. You should try to limit it to about 1,000 observations. That's what's easy to do right now. That'll take probably about 30 seconds to create that data export. So think of some criteria to narrow it down to about 1,000 or less. You're going to have about 10 minutes in the rooms. Please do introduce yourselves, help each other out, and also going to go over a shortcut real quick. On iNaturalist, you can click the Explore button. This is just from the home page. And you can select like a species, so let's say sharks, and let's say LA County. And that's what this is showing here. Now, from this point, you can go to Filters and then click Download. And it will take you to that exact same export page that I was talking about earlier with those values filled in. Okay. Okay. I know that's a lot, but thank you all, and let's head to breakout rooms. I'll be coming around.
All right, so we'll have about 10 minutes. Good luck, everybody. This is an advanced group. I know it. All right. We'll see you in 10.
The breakout rooms, we're doing well, so that's great. If not, totally fine. The most important thing is that you know that you can do this now. Like, I think, and you can follow that step-by-step guide with screenshots at any time.
All right, we should have everybody back at this point, Graham. If they're not back, they're someplace I don't know where they are.
All right. Thanks, John. Lost in the ether. Let me navigate back to my stuff. Just by a show of hands, can I see, you can, and this is in the participants window, you can raise your hand on the chat. Can you raise your hand if you successfully got a CSV file? Or just do it in your like physical space. Yes, that's great. Okay, lots of people. Good, okay, fantastic. Well, good job, y'all. And I know we do have a lot more like scientists here than I was expecting. So if you're already familiar with that, then great. Okay, wonderful. Let me start sharing screen again. And if you didn't get there, again, totally fine. That was kind of fast. So let's move on to the next section. We have our data file. Now what? There are two main steps that I think of at this point: visualization and analysis. There's a pithy quote that I love. If your experiment needs statistics, you ought to have done a better experiment. I don't know who said this. It's probably apocryphal, but I think it's not even that true. We should be trying to quantify uncertainty, and that's kind of the goal of statistics. But it does bring up an important point. You don't really need to do an analysis if you can just visualize something and it's clear what's going on. So that's why I think that for the purposes of this course, this class, we should just do visualization. So I'm gonna do a brief Excel walkthrough as well. You can also use any other spreadsheet program for the scientists in the room. And really just in general, as you become more advanced using iNaturalist data, I really recommend using R. R is free. It's relatively intuitive as far as programming languages go, which is to say not very intuitive, but I do recommend learning it. You'll get a lot out of it. It's very powerful. So follow along on my screen as we go through this. And there will be a break after this, after I'm done talking on this part. Okay. So here's some example data, some practice data. I searched, in this case, I searched for birds, all bird species, all bird observations, made from an island off of the coast of Rhode Island, Block Island. I've been there once. It was pretty. I just chose it randomly. So one thing we might be interested in doing is finding out what species are most common in this area of Block Island. And we can come up with a histogram, basically a bar chart for doing this. And it's actually not that complicated. So if you're familiar with Excel, and some of you probably are more familiar with Excel than I am, that's great. I mostly use R, like I said, but if you're not familiar with Excel, it's still not too difficult. We're going to use the very scary sounding pivot chart, pivot table. Nothing to be afraid of. So first, we're going to select our column that we're interested in. In this case, it is the bird species names. I want to know how many observations are there of American goldfinch and great egret and black scoter, and which one of these is the most common, right? It looks like, at a glance, it looks like house sparrow is pretty common, herring gull is pretty common, but let's visualize this. Let's do some data science. So what we're going to do is insert a pivot chart table. So this first, we've already selected what we're interested in. And now we're not going to create a new worksheet. We're just going to place this thing on an existing worksheet. And then from here, you're just going to click where you want it to go. So I'm clicking on row, on this cell Q5 it is. And click OK. And now from here, what we're going to do is, okay, this example, I apologize a little bit because it's not, I could have made it more clear, but this pivot table fields window will pop up. And what we're going to do is we're interested in this column L, and Excel is calling it American goldfinch. That whole column, it's calling American goldfinch. What it really is common name. Okay, it's just that we didn't actually specifically label it common name. The first value is American goldfinch, so that's what Excel thinks it is. And so what we're going to do here is we'll just click and drag from this column into the axis here. This is axis, and then also click and drag that same column into values, and that will automatically give us a bar chart here. This tells you the basically the count of every species. Now, you may notice that the text is a little too big. We don't see the names of every species, so we can fix that. We can just expand it. If I was doing if I wanted to make this real pretty, we could narrow down the species maybe to just the most common ones. And I would like to also organize this a little better, so we have all the common species, all the most common species on the left, and then go in order to the least common species. And to do that, we can go to sorting, the sorting options, more sort options. And here, it's either going to be ascending or descending by the count. Okay. So it did the opposite. It did like the higher numbers on the right side. I actually want the higher numbers on the left side. So to do that, we're just going to click descending instead of descending. And boom, we have actually one of the most important figures in ecology. It's very simple, but we just made it. And we often talk about how ecologists are jealous of physicists. For example, physicists have all these nice, neat laws. They have like Maxwell's equations and the law of gravity. Ecologists, nature is a lot more complicated. But one of the very few laws that we do have is that if you look at the abundance of species, you will find that this general shape, you will find that there are some species that are very common, and then a lot of species that are rare. Okay, so this is in ecology textbooks. We've just discovered something amazing, basically. And I'm not even being facetious. This is actually really cool, even though it's very simple. To make this pretty, I don't know, let's make it green. So we're going here to fill color, I think it is. Yeah, and then green. Wow, amazing. Let's change the title to be like, what is this? This is bird species by abundance on Block Island. Before anybody corrects me, it's actually not abundance. That's not what we're really showing here. This is by number of observations. Number of iNaturalist observations. And chances are that the birds that are observed most often are the most common, but it might be the case that there's just like one really rare species that's just really obvious, and there's a really common species that's just impossible to see. You can imagine that being the case. Okay, so boom, we've just created a really important figure in ecology. You can also, if we, let's say, I think we can, let's just select these columns here. And now from here, we can also just like insert any type of graph we want, basically. So you can go to recommended charts, all charts, and if we wanted to create a line graph, that doesn't make sense in this case since we're not really showing change over time, but we could do that. A pie chart would actually be pretty useful, except pie charts are hard for humans to visualize in general. So a donut chart might be more useful. So let's make one of those. And this is just showing that same data in a different way. And we can mess with the options to make it more clear. But that's the basics of creating charts in Excel. Okay. There's a question in the chat. I always wonder if common species are actually underrepresented because people don't consider it worth opening the app. Absolutely. So on iNaturalist, common species are probably even more common because a lot of people, like myself, just don't observe the same thing over and over again. I do not take a picture of every single honeybee I see. I've taken a picture of like one honeybee ever, even though I see them all the time. All right, so with that, I think we can head into breakout rooms again and try to create this. Try to create a chart of any kind, be as basic as you want it to be. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, we'll send you into breakout rooms for another. I'm looking at the clock. We've got about a half an hour, Graham.
Yeah, let me, if I could, let me also ask y'all to this. While you're in breakout rooms, let's extend it to 15 minutes of time in breakout rooms. And while you're in there, try to do the chart if you can. But the main thing I would actually like y'all to do is to come up with some ideas. Like I hope that this has been like, it's been useful to see the kinds of questions you can ask with the iNaturalist data that's available for free. So yeah, maybe like one person per breakout room you can designate as like the reporter and write on the Jamboard, which we will drop the link into the chat now. Write on the Jamboard maybe a few ideas that y'all have for good activities. And when we come back, we can go over some of those. And I'll talk about like something that I have, but I'm really interested to see what y'all come up with as well.
Okay, great. So I will put you into rooms. I put the Jamboard link in the chat, but not everyone should try to get on it because I think it will quickly fill up and a lot of people will not be able to access it. So maybe just one or so person from each breakout room get on there, and you'll see that it has pages and pages where you can just leave sticky notes of ideas or questions or anything else you want to communicate on that. Everyone else will be able to see it, and it will be available after we're done.
Yeah.
So,
and also, this is a time to take a quick bio break if you need it as well.
That's right.
Thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you, Susan. Yeah, always. If you need to take a bio break, take the bio break. That's my rule.
I promised a break, but I did not. Okay, there you go.
That's okay. All right, here we go. For about 10 to 15 minutes, we'll try this out. Good luck.
We talk about something that I've come up with, and then let's move to the Jamboard after that and just take a look. And if anybody wants to share some things that they've been talking about, feel free to do that at that point. Right, so like I said, monarchs are a really useful system for teaching because they, well, for one thing, you can grow them, you can touch them, you can hold them. Kids love that. You can watch them grow. It's pretty amazing. Now, like I said, I study the insect apocalypse in quotes. I study insect declines. And monarchs are a species that are in pretty precipitous decline right now, according to the data that we have. For example, I'll show you this chart down here. This is from the WWF. This is the amount of acres of forest occupied by monarch butterflies in the winter in Mexico. So monarch butterflies are migratory. They migrate to Mexico, and then they spend the whole winter there hanging on to the leaves of trees. And if there are a lot of monarch butterflies, they're going to cover a large area. If there are few, they're not going to cover as much of an area. So this is basically a measure of their population size, the area covered. And you can see from this that it fluctuates a lot. It goes up and down a lot. But unfortunately, in 2014, 2013, 2012, which are the most recent years we have data, at least that I have found, then you can see that we're down to just like 2 acres, 3 acres of butterflies in these forests, as opposed to like up at its peak, it was at 45 acres, 15 to 45 back in the early 90s. So I don't want to like bum you guys out about monarchs. But kind of my point is that we can also investigate this trend. We can explore this trend find out what's going on better using iNaturalist data. You can basically download a CSV file like we did with Monarchs. You can graph those observations by months or year, like here. You can create basically the same chart just with the iNaturalist data. And what you might find, though, is you might find that starting in 2005, that's when iNaturalist really started, you probably would only get a few Monarch observations. And then 2006, you have more Monarch observations. 2007, you get even more. And it would look like Monarch population is growing exponentially from 2005 up to 2014. So hey, the Monarchs are doing great. But that's probably just an artifact of the fact that people are using, there are way more people submitting observations these days than there used to be back when iNaturalist started. And so that introduces lots of interesting questions about like, when can we trust data, and like how, like, what do we expect things to look like in the future? How do we account for these biases? Just a thought, maybe some inspiration for some of your own things. But I'll post this if anybody wants it. So with that, let's head to the Jamboard. Does anybody have anything they want to share about any of their sticky notes? Some brave soul must. There's a lot of expertise here, so I'm excited. Let's see. Cool. Oh yeah, and I didn't even mention the City Nature Challenge that's coming up. So the City Nature Challenge is basically, it started as like a competition between, I think, like LA and San Diego to see who could see the most species, or no, it was LA and San Francisco. And it's just turned into this event every year for iNaturalist where people in different cities try to see as many different species as possible. Super fun, really fun. Right, so one thing I see here is like collecting the data in like your area, and then comparing that to maybe going to another area and collecting some other observations. I think that's a great idea. You might not even have to, it might be fun if you like go to both places, but you might just be able to collect some data in your area and then compare that to another area. And you can even do that right around your campus or wherever you are.
Sorry about that, Graham. There's a request in the chat. If you are able to, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do this or not. If you can make your screen somehow bigger that you're sharing, the people that can't get on the Jamboard and are just looking at it on your screen,
Oh.
some of them can't read the size. I'm not sure if you'll
zoom in. Is that better?
Jody, does that help? Or whoever always asking that. Yes, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that helps.
Thank y'all. Thanks for posting that R tutorial. Yeah, if anybody's interested, highly recommend getting involved in that. There's also a lot of great communities, like Our Ladies around, set up around using R. Cool. So I can't see who did this, but somebody downloaded all of the snakes and lizards in Lansing, Michigan. And yeah, you can totally turn that into something for like teaching outdoor safety. Like, hey, look at all these snakes. The 10 most common ones are all non-venomous, but there's the 11th one is something we should look out for, and here's how to distinguish them. Yeah, and I love like lots of ideas about like using the observation process as like a way to get people interested in nature. Like that's how I got interested, basically. BioBlitz during different times of year, absolutely, seeing how things change, especially with spring coming up. I love that. Yeah. Oh, I love an iNaturalist camp. Oh, that'd be so fun. Yeah, and there's the NPS app. That'd be really cool to add some integration with iNaturalist. It'd be really useful for the Park Service too. I know you all have like kind of a similar database that's like your own, but I know you also are able to use iNaturalist often. Cool. Okay, well, thanks for sharing, everybody.
And Graham, there is a question. The question is, what determines if a location name appears in the place field?
Great question. It's basically, there's two ways that there's two types of locations on iNaturalist. There is one, all the locations from Google Maps, because they use Google. So basically, if you type in Los Angeles, that will show up, either the city or the county. You get to choose probably, as long as it's in their database, in the Google database. There are also user-created locations, and so that's how people create like a boundary around like their specific nature center or whatever to make a project, for example. And you can do that if you want to create your own location. You can also, if you're finding that that's like more complicated than you really want to deal with, you can just use the tool where you zoom in and zoom out and then say like search in this square. And that's really helpful. Oh, wow. I love this suggestion. Downloading from IRMA, which is like the Park Service like a database, to compare and contrast with what you see or what people on iNaturalist are seeing. That's really cool. Oh, and yeah, there's another question. Our group had a question about marketing the use of the app, especially with not having internet to download at parks. Do you have suggestions for encouraging use? And yeah, so the one good thing about iNaturalist is you can use it offline. But if you want to get people to download the app, yeah, you can't do that at a place where there's no internet or no service. So that's a problem, and you would need to have them downloaded ahead of time, and I think that's a tough challenge. Maybe a handout or something, so like people will remember when they get home to do this. You could also have them like take pictures. They can take as many pictures as they want and then upload them later. And I agree. I would love to see that capacity in the Park Service app. Yeah, Sarah. So so what these people did it's Forrester et al. 2021 on butterflies, and it's in Science. It shouldn't be too hard to find in theory, and you can see what they did to look for that abundance data. That will at least help with the specific problem of abundance. Welcome. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? I know we're coming up on our time pretty quickly. I do want to like re-emphasize that all of these materials are available, and let me head to this final slide here. There'll be a little, I'll stick around a little bit at the end if anybody does want to ask me questions. Always feel free to get in touch with me. This is my email, graham.montgomery@ucla.edu. Happy to answer questions, happy to help. I hope what you got from this is that you have a better idea of what you're able to do with iNaturalist, and what scientists are starting to use it for, even like abundance. I really believe iNaturalist is just revolutionizing ecology, and it's fun on top of all that. Definitely would like feedback. This is the first time I've done this workshop. I know it was a little bit rushed, but would love feedback on like what was helpful, what wasn't helpful. There's a section on the Jamboard for that. And then I also recommend going to this link to see ways that other educators use iNaturalist in their own classrooms or organizations. Here's a little info on R. And if you want to get a little more advanced and start using the API, then there is a link to some information on that as well.
Great, and I thank you so much, Graham, and for all the resources that we can take home with us. It's really appreciated. And I did just put in the chat my email if you are a teacher and you need CEU credit, or if you're a North Carolina environmental education certificate person and you need the Form B, you can email me. And John is going to let folks know where the video is going to live, because we're getting lots of questions about the video. And it's going to be on the Tremont website, but he'll let you know where to go to find it. So I'll let him close us out.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Graham, and everybody for jumping in and making this work. Yes, so the video recording, there's lots of questions about the video. That will be available on our website in about a week. It'll take us a little bit of time to edit out a lot of, make it a little shorter. And I'll send you out a link to get to that. This presentation that Graham just showed you will also be there. He's shared that with us, as well as all those other resources that were there. So if you would make sure to keep that Jamboard link and give us feedback on this, we will likely be doing it again. And your feedback will really help a lot. And also adding any of your thoughts or ideas into that would be great as well. So yeah, thank you all. 5 o'clock, bravo, we somehow did it. And a big round of applause to everybody, and I hope you get out. Enjoy this lovely, lovely spring.
Yeah, no matter where you are, there's some amazing natural phenomenon to check out. So upload it to iNat.